Hello there, people of the internet. I'm out here once again with my Hightower Carbine. This is chambered at 45 ACP, and I have a very interesting topic to discuss with you guys today. So I've had a couple of people ask me my opinion on using a pistol caliber carbine for defensive purposes, especially in comparison to a intermediate caliber rifle, or specifically just a handgun. A lot of people don't really know why you would decide to go with a pistol caliber carbine whenever you can just have a handgun that fires the same cartridge and is much easier to conceal and easier to store, easier to maneuver with, easier all around, so they think, rather than invest in the time and effort and money and weight and much less maneuverability, in theory, that a PCC offers as opposed to a handgun. And I figured I'd go ahead and make a video on this just because it is something that I think would be a really interesting topic to discuss, and I think a lot of you guys are going to provide a lot of valuable insight down in the comments as well. So why you would want a pistol caliber carbine as opposed to an intermediate caliber rifle, like say a 223 or something like that. I'd say the biggest thing, especially if you are using it for defensive purposes, is over penetration. If you are living in a place like I am and, you know, it's 500 yards in every direction and the nearest person to you is like a mile and a half away, then having an intermediate carbine for defensive purposes is actually a good way to go. But if you are living in an apartment complex or someplace like that, then maybe lobbing 223 through your wall, your neighbor's wall, the rest of your building, out the side of your building, it would probably, well, I know for a fact that 223 over-penetrates more than people want it to. Even the frangible ammunition, just because it has broken apart, it is still traveling very quickly, and there's a lot of energy that 223 or any intermediate caliber rifle cartridge is going to have. There's a lot of energy that is still being transferred downrange even after it has burst through this wall and that wall and the next wall. I've seen plenty of videos on penetration of 223, including frangible ammunition, and although the concept of the idea is interesting, it is not viable. So having a slower moving pistol caliber for defensive purposes, especially if you're only defending yourself up to like 15 feet if you're going to be inside your own home, that is definitely a good go-to, because the slower moving well then the slower moving projectile in comparison to the intermediate rifle cartridge, the slower moving projectile is going to have a lot less over penetration, especially if you use like a soft point or hollow point or frangible ammunition, or something that is designed to transfer as much energy as possible into whatever it hits and slow down as quickly as possible. With projectiles like this, you're going to have a lot less problem with over penetration. With a intermediate rifle cartridge, there's a lot of movement. It is traveling really, really fast, and you're going to have penetration, and you're going to have over penetration and over penetration, whereas the weaker cartridge would definitely be a good way to go, especially if you don't want to worry about killing your neighbor who is 3 houses down. Yeah, perhaps using an M1 Garand in 30-06 is not a good go-to if you are in an apartment complex. Oh, especially if like it's a 3-story apartment complex, man. It's not a good way to go. You want the weaker cartridges if you're going to be doing any kind of close quarters fighting. Not only that, but the weaker cartridges have lighter recoil, although 223 is a pretty light recoil as is. Lighter recoil, you don't have to worry about long range shooting like you would want out of an intermediate cartridge, just because you're going to be duking it out indoors. Now I'm going to talk about why you would want a carbine as opposed to a handgun. People that don't know much about firearms think that handguns are easier to shoot than carbines because they're lighter, they're easier to maneuver with, etc., etc. Well, a carbine like this that allows 3 points of contact is actually a lot easier and a lot quicker to use than a handgun, which only has 2 points of contact, which is your hands. Especially if you're not vitally and valuably trained in being able to use these different things. Using a handgun, especially under pressure, you are probably going to be pretty inaccurate, especially if you are trying to be quick with it. Whereas using something like a pistol caliber carbine, the accuracy is going to be a lot better. Not only that, but going with a pistol caliber carbine, especially a shorter one, you're not losing that much more maneuverability. The heavier weight of the pistol caliber carbine, especially in comparison to the handgun itself, actually means less recoil as well. So you have faster follow-up shots, better control, and you just sacrifice not that much maneuverability, but a little bit of it. Now, the idea of using a carbine as opposed to a handgun, just because the carbine offers a variety of greater attributes, including accuracy and ease of use and ability to follow up, etc., etc. The concept of using a PCC as opposed to a handgun is actually not a new concept at all. Let me show you guys this. By now, this would have popped up several times on my channel. At time of recording, I have not shown this off yet on the channel, but by the time this video comes out, this will be like the third or fourth video about this that I've shown off. This right here is my .30 caliber carbine. This is just a modern production, IAI production. 96 to 2002 is whenever they were making these. But the concept of the carbine came out in World War II. The United States military had decided that they wanted something more effective than their 1911 whenever it came to the personal defense of people that weren't fighting on the front lines. They wanted basically a carbine that could touch out to the distances beyond what the 1911 could handle, but it didn't need to touch out to the .30-06 distance that the Garand was able to handle. Now granted, this was pushed into frontline service by the troops who really liked it and didn't feel like lugging around the Garand. As a result, this got a reputation for being very poor in terms of stopping power, but they were pushing it towards something that it wasn't designed for. This was designed to replace, well, not replace, to substitute a handgun and not substitute a rifle. The .30-06 is substantially more powerful than the carbine. But the concept of using a pistol caliber carbine, which this is, technically not, the .30 caliber carbine is very ballistically similar to a .357, but it's not a true pistol caliber because there's not pistols out there that are chambered in .30 caliber carbine. There might be a couple of oddballs because we're people and we like doing things like that. But for the most part, it's for the carbines themselves. But the concept is the same. However, these were designed to reach out to a bigger distance and be lighter weight than a rifle. Like, the reason and the rationale behind the pistol caliber carbine and why it was made, or at least this pistol caliber carbine, is actually different than the arguments that I'm trying to make. This was made to reach out to a farther distance than a handgun, but be lighter weight, more portable, less powerful than a full power rifle. Whereas I am trying to push for the idea that over-penetration with these, especially if you're using soft points or something like that, which I am in fact using in this .30 caliber carbine here, soft point ammunition, which would be quite ideal for defending your home if you are in a populated area. The rationales behind the pistol caliber carbine are actually coming from two opposite ends of the spectrum there, but they come out to relatively the same concept. It's almost like whenever the Germans and the Russians each made an intermediate rifle. The Russians wanted to make a rifle that could substitute for a submachine gun, and the Germans wanted to make a submachine gun that could substitute for a rifle, and they both came up with the same thing. My rationale is basically the same. Having a PCC for defense because they are easier to use than a handgun, but you don't want over-penetration. You want that lighter weight cartridge so it's easier to stop. Whereas, you know, in 1942, 43, whenever it is that these carbines came out and were introduced, to replace the 1911, they wanted them to reach out to a further distance than the handgun. So, same Same creation, different rationales. Okay, I think I've rambled on as to the potential reasons why somebody would want to use a PCC for their defensive weapon, as opposed to a handgun or a full caliber carbine, especially if you are fighting at 50 yards or more, which isn't something that would really come across in a in-house situation, but it is a potential. If you have the potential for being around 50 yards or closer, PCC would definitely be a good way to go, just because of the drop of the rounds and the lack of energy delivered on target at a further distance. I would recommend, especially if you start going out to like 100 yards, I would recommend using an intermediate cartridge. That would be the ballpark where I'd go from a PCC to an intermediate cartridge, probably around 100 yards or so. Although you can make shots out there on target, by the time a 9mm or a pistol caliber reaches that far, if it manages to hit targets, it's going to be significantly more anemic. Now comes the fun part. I'm just going to go ahead. I got some 45 ACP inside of this Hightower, high point Hightower bullpup conversion right here. I'm just going to lob some lead down at our steel silhouette down there, basically just for fun at this point. And the beauty about the PCCs is they are quite a deal cheaper than your intermediate carbines. This Hightower right here, or basically just high points in general, are actually really good pistol caliber carbines for not a lot of money at all. As a matter of fact, you can get like 2.5 of these, or like 1 and a bunch of ammo to practice with for the same price that you would get just the rifle of an even moderately decent intermediate cartridge rifle. Okay, let me go ahead. I got my optic on. I see my steel down there. I'm going to lob some lead. The 45 ACP is a lot of mass moving downrange, and the high point Hightower carbines, or the high point carbines in general, operate just on a mass bolt. They don't have a locking system. They're just delayed blowback, meaning the mass of the bolt is the only thing that stops the gun from opening prematurely. As a result, they need a pretty massive bolt. As a result of that, which is one of the reasons why they're so cheap, as a result of that, though, they do have quite a deal of recoil. I've handled several 45 ACP guns, but this one by far has the most recoil out of all of the ones that I've played around with, but it's still a good time. And it's accurate too. Follow-up shots are very easy to make with this thing. And whenever you get yourself a magazine, I only fired 5 rounds here, I think, just because ammunition is expensive. But they got like 20 round extended mags. You know, those would be very good for defensive purposes or whatever it is that you're using your PCC for. In my particular case, I mostly just use it at the range. Now, just because I have my M1 carbine out here, I'm going to go ahead and lob some 30 caliber carbine ammunition downrange as well. These magazines suck. These are aftermarket magazines, and they are not great. So I'm probably going to have some malfunctions with this M1 carbine. I do intend to get actual GI style mags that actually, you know, work in these things, but I don't have them yet. And I just got this, despite the fact that this video is probably going to be aired quite a ways down the road. I just picked this up, so I don't have the luxury of having my standard capacity magazines yet. Anyway, that's not going to stop me from lobbing some lead downrange. Oh, yep, there's our malfunction. Now, let's see, what was I just about to say? Come on, baby, stop being like that. What was I going to say here? Ah, yes. This right here, having an actual locking system and a lot less mass flying backwards, actually has quite a deal less recoil than my 45 ACP Hightower. It's also got half the bullet flying downrange. The 30 caliber carbine is like 110 grain bullet, whereas the 45 ACP is 230, if memory serves me correctly. Hey, we actually cycled. How do you like that? There we go. There's our failure to cycle. Failure to eject too. Ah, get out of there. I do like, that's just a failure feed right there. I do like this carbine, and I feel like once I get proper mags for it, and once I break it a little bit, because it is very clearly very, very new, I feel like it's going to be a good little shooter. It's definitely accurate, that's for sure. Granted, I had to, failure to eject there. Granted, I had to fiddle around with the sights to make it accurate, and the rear sight is quite a deal off center, but it does fire where it needs to fire now, and we're only firing where we're supposed to be firing with the sights sighted out to 300 yards, because if I bring it down to like the 100 that it would normally be at on an actual military grade M1 carbine, if I bring it down to the 100, then we shoot like 2 feet low. So this is just where the M1 carbine is going to be at, but I don't foresee myself shooting beyond, 100 yards with this thing. So where it's at is more than significant. Anyway, lady and gentlemen, just gentlemen, deranged psychopaths that watch my videos, thanks for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. You guys are very, very, very good at doing that. And a lot of times what you guys have to say is very humbling. So, like I said, let me know what your thoughts are down below. I'm sure that somebody's going to bring up something that I missed here, because they do that all the time, and it always makes for very good content on one of my future videos. Just things that I didn't necessarily think about. Like I said before, I'm a one-man band, and having people to talk with and come up with ideas with and whatnot are always sought after by yours truly. I'm having trouble forming sentences here. Having more minds is better than having just one mind, especially whenever it comes to coming up with sentences, coming up with content, especially creative content, and things that I myself normally would not think about, etc., whatever. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Description has a bunch of links, all sorts of goodies, including an email sign-up list. I feel like shooting some more, but I don't feel like burning off a bunch of ammo. I am caught between a rock and a hard place, guys. I really am. I want to run more rounds through this M1 carbine, but I've got like 10 rounds left, and I'll have to figure out the content I feel like making with those 10 rounds. Or maybe I'll save those 10 rounds because they're soft point rounds, and I might actually take this thing hunting. That would be a good time. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. You guys go off. Have a fantastic day. I'm sure I will come up with something. I like the PCCs because they don't recoil much. I have a lot of high power, full power cartridge rifles, and my God, I might just grab my AK-47 and do some joy plinking with that. Well, actually, the price of AK ammo has skyrocketed. I'm rambling like I always do. You guys go off. Have a fantastic day. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt action shotguns aren't more mainstream.